Greetings, travelers. I'm your host, the C-Dot that knows a lot, Dr. Waluigi. As someone who has only recently started reviewing comic books, I do feel a little out of my element when it comes to choosing stuff to talk about, since most of my knowledge comes from watching the many movies and TV shows from Marvel or DC. Hence why I was so divisive on deciding if I wanted to review comic books for my show. But with today's review, I think I've made the right choice, as this is a comic book, or graphic novel, that I think more people should check out. This is my review of the 2002 graphic novel, Weapon Brown. The book was published by Death Ray Graphics and was written by Jason Youngblood, who created the character and eventually expanded upon this story in another Death Ray graphic comic called Deep Fried. The book started out as a 4-issue series before it was eventually released as an omnibus collecting both the original run and the sequel run. The comic also got a continuation called Weapon Brown Aftershock, which I only discovered while researching this comic's creation, so I haven't read it yet. The book has done well critically, but hasn't really sold well, as the graphic novel was originally only available online, and you could only find the physical copy that I have on Amazon or if you subscribe to a loot box service back in 2013. Though I have heard that the omnibus is available to buy in most local comic book stores, so it is slowly becoming more widely available for those who want to check it out. The book is a parody of different comic strip characters that live in a post-apocalyptic world where we follow a Charlie Brown parody going on Mad Max-style adventures with his dog Snoopy. Specifically, the omnibus is split into two different stories, the first being Charles looking for the little red-haired girl who was kidnapped by Linus, and the second story following Charles helping a group of freedom fighters escape from an evil organization, who send their most dangerous mercenary to hunt them down. Which turns out to be an evil version of Calvin and Hobbes. Yes, really. I will say that despite the darker writing of this book, it does still keep true to the tone and style of the comic strips that it parodies. Even though this book does combine a lot of the popular post-apocalyptic story elements like stuff from Mad Max or the Book of Eli. Especially when it comes to the different characters, like having Peppermint Patty and Marcy running a brothel, and they end up helping Chuck, restore his energy, or that Sally and Linus act very similar to Harley Quinn and the Joker. The only other characters I'll mention are the Resistance members in the second story arc. There's Annie, who is the leader but is blind and ends up sleeping with Charles. Man, this guy gets a lot of tail in this book. Her second-in-command Pops, aka Popeye, who is just there to protect Annie, and the villains of this story arc, Calvin and Hobbes, where Calvin is an evil asshole mercenary who uses Hobbes to kill all of those who stand in his way. Overall, I'd say that this kind of blending of two different genres surprisingly works well considering how dark and disturbing some of the stories get. The art for this book is one that does take a little getting used to, but I will say that it did grow on me as I continued to read it. The art has a 50s style quality to it that honestly reminds me of comics like Tales from the Crypt, with how dark and murky the backgrounds and characters look. Specifically with how Charles looks like an over-exaggerated Superman to the graboid-looking thing of Garfield. I feel like normally these types of parody character designs would put some fans off due to how silly and graphic they are, but the comic finds a balance with these designs and it complements the writing very well. I feel like if the creators of this book tried to make every character look like they came out of the different comic strips they were a part of, it wouldn't work as well and the tone would just be all over the place. But with this art design, it is much easier to get a grasp on what the story and tone are like, despite the much weirder and darker moments in the book. While I can't say that I've read a lot of parody comics, I will say that this one is worth your time. Unlike a lot of other parodies that either rely on cheap humor or mock the source material to the point of insulting said source material, this graphic novel takes itself seriously enough that you can enjoy the action moments but laugh at the absurdist humor of a muscle-bound Charlie Brown and his dog Snoopy fighting against a muscle-bound Calvin and Hobbes. Overall, I give Weapon Brown an 8 out of 10. The only thing that will take some time to get used to is the art style and the fact that the whole omnibus will seem a little off if you read through all of the stories and try to figure out where each story begins and ends. But I definitely recommend this to everyone who wants to read a good post-apocalyptic story that is lighthearted and fun. Thanks for watching, I'm Dr. Waluigi, and remember, Don't judge a book by its cover, because you'll never know what's inside. Good night, everyone.
You remind me of the babe. Babe with the power. Power of voodoo.